Usually Marcel's here, but he's being a douche. And, you know, having a life. Anyway, so usually he's here making some sort of coffee drink. But really, I think before we get more complicated with the drinks that we're making, we should get down to one of the fundamentals of coffee, and that is the beans. With that being said, we can take this out of the equation and just focus on grinding the beans. Now, most of you making coffee at home on a daily basis are probably using pre-ground coffee and not the whole bean variety of coffee, which is not bad because it does yield an okay cup of coffee. But if you were grinding your own beans with a grinder like this, not only will the coffee be fresher because it is staying in its bean form longer, keeping in the goodness of the coffee, but when it comes time to initiate the brewfication process with your freshly ground coffee, it'll yield a better tastifying cup of coffee. So let's talk about grinders. There are two basic styles of grinders. The first one I have right here is called a blade grinder. They're relatively inexpensive, ranging from $15 to $40. This one was probably about $25, I think. You know, the way that they work is they spin the blade and chop up the beans. This is great for normal, everyday use, really. But because of the way it grinds the beans, it can turn out inconsistent, which would be bad if you were grinding coffee to, say, make an espresso. So really, the only thing it has going for it is that it's inexpensive. Now, the second type of grinder, which I don't have because I don't have money, is called a burr grinder. They range in price from $60 to $400. The way they work is they move the beans through a grinding wheel to grind the beans, which is more consistent. There are two types of burr grinders. There's a wheel burr grinder, which are fast, messy, and quite loud, but in their category, less expensive. And then there's the conical burr grinder, which is slower, quieter, and less messy, and less likely to clog, but it is in the higher range of the price. Now let's get down to the grinding. I'll be over here. There are 3 different grind levels, depending on which type of machine you're using and what type of coffee you're planning on brewing. The first grind level is coarse, which, by the name, is coarse and is used primarily for making coffee in a French press. The second grind level is medium, which most people will be using. Medium grind is just a little smaller, it's in the middle, medium, you know, and it's primarily used for drip pot brewers, which is just for regular coffee. And then finally, the last grind level is fine, which is primarily used for making espresso. I will now demonstrate the 3 different grind levels on my coffee grinder right here. Now, grinding time depends on your grinder, so you're probably going to have to read your manual for this. But what I'm demonstrating right here would probably work well on your grinder too. The first thing I'm going to do is load up my grinder with the maximum amount of beans it can take, which is about 5½ coffee scoops or 11 tablespoons. And a half. Reading my directions, I find that to achieve a coarse grind, the first level of grinding will take about 9 seconds. And you can either roughly count this out in your head or, you know, use a stopwatch. So let's get started. Okay, about 9 seconds. Your coffee should look like this, you know, coarse. Add another 6 seconds to that, and you'll have a medium grind. Now our espresso grind with our smaller amount of beans will take anywhere from 12 to 15 seconds. Okay, so I stopped at 13 seconds, somewhere in the middle. Let's have a look at this. As you can see, it's much more finely ground than the medium grind. Hi there. So reading further into my directions of my coffee grinder here, I find out that I can only have 3 scoops of beans to make an espresso grind, so I have to redo this. Let's get grinding. Now that the grindification process is over with, we have a pile of coffee that we have lazily put on this piece of paper towel. Now obviously this should be put in an airtight container to preserve freshness until you brew it. And then of course remember to always clean out your coffee grinder with a dry piece of paper towel. Now coming up next, I believe we have Brian Anderson reviewing Syobon Action.
Hi, I'm Brian Anderson, and this month I'm reviewing Syobon Action. This game is a cat like Mario, but there's traps that are hidden that you don't know about. Like, say you jump over this just this hole in the ground, and all of a sudden a block appears when you go to jump. That's what happens. God pretty much hates you when you play this game. It's one of the hardest games I've played. There's only, what, 4 levels?
Yes.
4 levels in the game, and you have unlimited lives. You just go into the negatives after you go to 0. And
I'd like to mention that about the only way you probably get through this game is by watching people on YouTube who have actually beaten the game and then copying what they've done. Which is how I won. And now I will never play it ever again.
I have to play it at school.
Unless I'm ready to work at school.
Yeah.
In 5th hour.
Second
Which
hour.
happens a lot. So yeah, hard game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd probably give it a 3 out of 5 stars, just because it really pisses you off. That's about it.
Okay, well that's about it for this episode of Techspresso. We'll have a new episode out next month, probably. So see you next time.